Explore the career story and lessons from Jason Ryan and the All Blacks, adaptation, personal values, and facing uncertainty. Subscribe to the channel.
Watching Jason Ryan and the changes within the All Blacks coaching staff, I realized I wasn't just following a piece of sports news. I was witnessing a very real slice of professional life, where stability, loyalty, and personal ability sometimes have to confront sudden and uncontrollable changes. The first thing that caught my attention was the sense of uncertainty that Ryan openly admitted. In a high-performance environment like the All Blacks, where everything is organized to near-perfect standards, people can still feel anxious about their position. This made me wonder if even the best, operating at the highest level, cannot be certain about the future. What reason do I, an ordinary person, have to take stability for granted? I used to think that if I did my job well and stayed long enough, my position would naturally become secure over time. But through this story, I began to understand that stability doesn't always come from duration, it comes from adaptability. Ryan has worked under multiple head coaches, from Ian Foster to Scott Robertson, and now Dave Rennie. Each one has a different philosophy and approach. Yet he has remained. This isn't by chance. Perhaps what kept him in place wasn't the position itself but the value he brought, a value adaptable across different systems.
I learned an important lesson here. Instead of clinging to a position, I should focus on building capabilities that can thrive in various circumstances. Because when the environment changes, only what is flexible can endure. Another aspect that struck me deeply was Ryan's attitude toward these changes. He said he never takes anything for granted. It sounds simple, but in practice, I realized it is much harder than I thought. Humans tend to grow accustomed to what they have and gradually assume it will always be there. I am no exception. There were periods in my life when I assumed opportunities, relationships, or even my job would always be there. But reality says otherwise. Ryan reminded me that everything can change. Sometimes very quickly. And when it does, the surprise isn't because the change was sudden, but because we forgot that it could happen. What I truly appreciate in this story isn't the anxiety itself, but the way he faces it. He doesn't avoid uncertainty. On the contrary, he prepares for it. His words, "I am ready," made me think deeply. Preparation here isn't just professional, it's psychological, a readiness to accept that everything could end at any moment.
I asked myself, if everything I have changed tomorrow, would I be ready? Or would I panic, regret, or even blame? Perhaps what Ryan demonstrates is a form of professional maturity, where one no longer clings to certainty but learns to live with uncertainty. Another deeply human aspect of the story is how Ryan speaks about colleagues who didn't remain after changes. He not only mentions work but also their families. This made me realize that behind every decision in professional sports, whether appointment or dismissal, there are profound impacts on people's personal lives. Sometimes, as fans, we only see results: who comes, who goes, who wins, who loses. But we forget that behind it are real people with real emotions. Ryan doesn't shy away from this. He acknowledges that it was a difficult time for many. Yet he also says, it's time to move forward. This statement struck me as a deeply balanced perspective. It doesn't deny grief, but it also doesn't let grief hold you back too long. I see it as a major life lesson. In life, we sometimes need to allow ourselves to feel loss, but also know when it's time to move on. I also paid attention to how Ryan spoke about Scott Robertson. He was not just a colleague but someone Ryan had worked closely with for years. When Robertson was dismissed, Ryan didn't turn away or keep his distance. Instead, he reached out, showing care. And what he said about Robertson, that he has a kind heart and will overcome, conveyed profound respect.
This made me reflect on my own relationships. In competitive environments, especially during change, people can get caught up in protecting their position and forget personal connections. But Ryan shows that no matter how circumstances shift, the way you treat others can remain constant. For fans, this story provides a different perspective on sports. We often talk about strategy, performance, and results, but we rarely discuss the uncertainty behind the scenes, where even the most dedicated professionals cannot fully control their career fate. Perhaps this helps me view sports more humanely. Instead of judging success or failure solely by results, I began to care more about the journey, how people face change, pressure, and loss. More broadly, Ryan's story is not just about sports. It is a story for anyone working in competitive and volatile environments. In today's world, where technology, markets, and organizations are constantly changing, stability is becoming increasingly rare.
I realized 3 lessons I can take for myself. 1. Take nothing for granted. This isn't to live in fear but to stay alert, always aware that what you have is the result of many factors and can change. 2. Prepare for change. Not by predicting exactly what will happen, but by building capabilities, mindset, and resilience to adapt when it does. 3. Uphold personal values in all circumstances. Regardless of changing environments or people, how you work and treat others is something you can control. For fans, the lesson might be empathy. When a coach is dismissed, a player dropped, or a team changes, it's not just strategic decisions, it's human stories. Understanding that helps us become more thoughtful sports followers. For anyone in life, this story reminds me, life isn't always fair or predictable. But how we respond, calmly, honestly, and focused on what we can do, shapes our path. Closing the story, I see no clear ending. Ryan remains, but the future is open. Robertson has left, but may return elsewhere, and the All Blacks continue their journey. Perhaps this unfinished quality is the most authentic. Life is always in motion, constantly changing, and rarely gives us absolute certainty. And perhaps the best thing I can do isn't seek certainty but learn to walk steadily even when the path ahead is still unclear.
Thank you for exploring the story of Ryan and the All Blacks with us. Always stay prepared, uphold your values, and stay resilient amidst uncertainty. See you next time.